Because until you see your current commitments, constraints, energy drains, and leverage points clearly, any plan you make is built on assumptions and not truth. And plans built in the fog create fragile momentum. Clarity should always come before strategy. Welcome to the Personal Mastery and Growth Podcast, where we explore the keys to unlocking your full potential and living your best life. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. Whether you're looking to make a breakthrough, overcome a challenge, or simply live with greater clarity, joy, and purpose, you'll find the tools and inspirations you need right here. So let's start your journey towards personal mastery and growth right now. Welcome back to the Personal Mastery and Growth Podcast, your go-to resource for practical tips, insightful research, and inspiring stories to help you unlock your full potential. I'm your host, Jose Johnson, and I'm an expert in the fields of mindfulness, mindset, and peak performance. And I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Now, as we continue building momentum into this new year, we're shifting from goal setting into something even more foundational, something that quietly determines whether your goals gain traction or slowly fade into frustration. And today, I want to talk about a word people use all the time, but rarely examine closely: stuck. Because if you've been telling yourself that you're stuck, overwhelmed, or spinning your wheels, I want to offer you a reframe that might feel both relieving and challenging. You're not stuck. You're unclear. And that distinction, well, it changes everything. So let's get into it. When people say they're stuck, what they're usually describing sounds something like this. I don't know what to focus on. I have too many things pulling at me. I feel busy all the time, but nothing really moves me forward. I know what I should be doing, but I can't seem to commit. Now, I want you to notice something important. Those aren't motivation problems. They're not discipline problems. And they're definitely not intelligence problems. They're clarity problems. Calling yourself stuck is like a pilot saying that they can't fly a plane when the real issue is that their navigation gauges are fogged up. The engines are working, the pilot is capable. It's visibility that's the problem. And when visibility drops, the nervous system shifts into protection mode. All right, so let's talk about what uncertainty does to the brain. Now, here's what neuroscience helps us to understand as to why this feels so uncomfortable. Your brain is wired to reduce uncertainty. Ambiguity, it's processed as a threat. When you don't have clarity, your brain interprets that as, well, I don't know what matters, and that could be dangerous. So instead of calm focus, the brain defaults to urgency, distraction, overactivity. And this is why unclear thinking often leads to things like compulsive email checking, constant list making, low impact productivity, staying busy instead of being intentional. See, busyness creates the illusion of control. Clarity creates actual direction. And without clarity, your nervous system stays subtly activated. It's not in panic mode, but in a constant low-grade hum of stress. And that is exhausting. So why do high performers feel this the most? Well, this part surprises people. Highly capable, intelligent, motivated individuals are often the most vulnerable to clarity collapse. Why? Because competence creates options, and options without structure, that creates overload. When you're capable, you rarely ask, what can I do? You ask, what should I do now? And when everything seems reasonable, urgency becomes the decision maker by default. Look, that's not a personal failure. It's what happens when clarity frameworks are missing. Most people think clarity comes from more research, more learning, more input, more perspective. But clarity doesn't come from addition. It comes from subtraction. Clarity asks, what matters now? What doesn't? And what can wait without guilt? When everything is important, nothing is important. And this is why time management tools don't fix clarity problems, because you're not trying to manage time. You want to manage your attention, energy, and decisions. So let's talk about what unclear thinking actually costs you. Unclear thinking creates decision fatigue, emotional drain, short tempers, decreased creativity, chronic feeling behind energy. Now, this is what I call cognitive drag. Things like unmade decisions, half formed plans, open loops your brain keeps recycling. Stress isn't always about workload. Often it's about unresolved direction. And until direction becomes clear, effort feels heavier than it should. Hey, let me pause for just a moment, because if this episode is hitting close to home, I want to share something with you. When I catch myself feeling mentally tired or scattered, I don't try to push harder or power through it anymore. I step back and I get clear. And that's exactly why I created the Clarity and Leverage Planning Kit. It's the same process that I'm using right now to architect my own year so that I'm not just busy, but intentional. It helps me get everything out of my head, see what actually matters, and focus my energy where it will make the biggest difference. Now, there's nothing complicated or overwhelming about it. It's designed to reduce mental clutter, not add to it. So, if you want to apply what we're talking about in this episode to your own life or work, you can find the kit at josejohnson.com/clarity. All right, let's jump back in. So, how do we begin restoring clarity? Oh, here's a deceptively simple question that I constantly use in coaching with leaders, high performers, and people who just feel overwhelmed but can't quite explain why. Take a moment and ask yourself this question: what problem am I actually trying to solve right now? Not what's loudest or what's most urgent or what's been on my list the longest, but what problem, if solved, would make everything else easier or unnecessary? Here's why this question is so powerful. Most of the stress people feel doesn't come from what they're doing. It comes from not being clear about why they're doing it. When you don't know what problem you're solving, every task feels equally important. Every interruption feels justified, and every decision feels heavier than it should. And the brain hates that. So it compensates. It seeks motion instead of meaning, activity instead of alignment, urgency instead of clarity. Look, that's not a failure of willpower. It's your nervous system's response to ambiguity. And this is where clarity begins to re enter the room. Here's the moment that most people miss. Once you name the real problem, something shifts. You stop asking, what should I do next? And you start asking, what actually matters right now? And that's the pivot point. Because clarity isn't about having all the answers. It's about choosing a direction your energy can organize around. And once direction becomes clear, behavior naturally follows. Which brings us to a very important distinction. Busy people, well, they ask what's next. Clear people ask what matters most right now. Busy people, well, they react to inputs. Clear people respond to priorities. Busy people try to manage time. Clear people manage direction, energy, and attention. So here's the difference in real life. A busy person fills their calendar. A clear person protects space for what matters. A busy person says yes quickly and typically resents it later. A clear person pauses, evaluates, and chooses intentionally. A busy person may feel productive, but a clear person creates progress. And this is important. You don't become clear by trying harder. You become clear by deciding what not to carry. Clarity isn't about speed. It's about alignment. And when alignment is present, momentum stops feeling forced. And this is exactly why I created the Clarity and Leverage Planning Kit. Not to help people do more, but to help people see clearly enough to do less better. And I want to be very transparent here. This is the same exact process I'm using to architect my own 2026. Not in theory, not as a concept, in real time. I'm using it to clarify where my energy actually belongs, to identify what deserves focus and what doesn't, to reduce unnecessary pressure, and to design a year that's intentional instead of reactive. Now, the first step in that process isn't goal setting, it's reality mapping. Because until you see your current commitments, constraints, energy drains, and leverage points clearly, any plan you make is built on assumptions and not truth. And plans built in the fog create fragile momentum. Clarity should always come before strategy. All right, before we close, here's a simple practice that you can try this week. Answer these 3 questions slowly. First, what feels heavy right now? Next, what decision have I been avoiding? And third, if I could only move one thing forward this week, what would it be? You see, clarity often arrives quietly, but once it does, momentum follows. So if you've been telling yourself you're stuck, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not broken, you're not lazy, and you're not behind. You're simply operating without enough clarity. And clarity, unlike motivation, is something that you can design. Now, in the next episode, we'll explore the hidden cost of mental clutter and how unresolved thinking quietly drains your energy, whether you notice it or not. This entire clarity series is built around one simple truth. You don't need to do more. You need to see more clearly. And if you want to apply what we're talking about in these episodes to your own life or work, the Clarity and Leverage Planning Kit gives you a clear, step-by-step process to do exactly that. It's designed to help you identify what matters, where your leverage is, and how to move forward without burning yourself out. And you can find it at josejohnson.com/clarity. Because clarity isn't just a mindset, it's a practice. And before you go, please do me a huge favor and share this episode with someone in your work or your life who might be feeling a little stuck. And make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. So until next time, remember, it is what it is, but it becomes what you make it. So make it great. Thanks for tuning in. Before we wrap up, I just want to remind you that the information shared in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional advice or treatment. While the content of this podcast is based on research and personal experience, everyone's situation is unique, and the advice given may not be applicable to all. Always consult a qualified professional before making significant changes in your life. The Personal Mastery and Growth podcast is recorded at the So Good Media Studios located in the Candy Factory, a co-working space in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.